Chief White House correspondent Major Garrett is with us now from West Palm Beach. Major, good to see you. Let me ask you, you've got an ear very close to the Marco Rubio campaign. What are you hearing from them about the next steps going forward?
So the campaign itself, meaning Marco Rubio, all of his closest paid advisors insist the following. Rubio will stay in this race until next Tuesday's Florida winner-take-all primary. They intend to win it, claim all 99 delegates, and restart this presidential campaign. That there are no serious discussions about quitting. What I can tell you is people within the inner circle around Marco Rubio, and by that I mean people who talk to Marco Rubio and his senior staff regularly, who wish the campaign well after last night's deeply discouraging performance, underperforming in all 4 states, conspicuously so, really began to have a conversation about whether or not it might be wiser for Rubio's long-term political future to drop out of the race, to avoid risking a defeat here in Florida, and maybe doing something like endorsing Ted Cruz or some other approach that would spare him the embarrassment of a loss in Florida. Because they wish Marco Rubio well, and they know he wants to have a viable political future going forward. That these conversations happen by people who wish Marco Rubio well is an absolute fact. The campaign, and I must take them at their word because I have no other choice, insists that Rubio himself is not considering that, and those closest on his paid staff are not considering this, and for a lot of obvious reasons. I'm not exactly sure, and I don't think anyone on the Rubio campaign believes it would do anything to spare him embarrassment by quitting now. It would be a humiliating act of leaving the field in the middle of the battle. Even so, people who are donors to the Rubio campaign, who looked at last night, said you didn't even get a single delegate, are now wondering, can you win Florida? And if you can't, why carry on? It seemed to them at times a futile gesture. Not for the Rubio campaign. They insist they're staying in. Will participate in a town hall tonight, debate Thursday, and carry this on all the way till next Tuesday's primary. And they still insist they can win.
So if he goes forward, though, and he actually manages to win Florida, I mean, is there an argument that goes he'll probably end up helping out Ted Cruz more than anything else because at least he will have taken delegates away from Donald Trump, but moving forward, he's probably not going to win anything else?
Well, that's a very important point. One of the things the Rubio campaign relies on here is something it hasn't had anywhere else, a statewide organization. Well, Marco Rubio ought to have a statewide organization. He's the senator from Florida. They don't have that in other places, and that lack of ground game organization has shown up repeatedly in this campaign. It showed up most conspicuously in New Hampshire, where Rubio had his one and only wobbly performance in a debate, and the elevator shaft opened up beneath him, and he went from rising in momentum after a surprising third-place victory in Iowa to crushing back down to 5th in New Hampshire. When you don't have a ground game beneath you, it matters. So he has one here in Florida. Of course he does. But does he have one anywhere else? And can he mount a national campaign even with a narrow victory? And I guarantee you the Rubio campaign is not expecting, if it does win in Florida, to win by a lot. They would take a one-vote victory here in Florida. Can you replicate that anywhere else in the primary and caucus calendar? In all likelihood, not. So in the end, and this goes back to the conversation, is it really worth staying in Florida? Because even if you win, what can you accomplish after that? It's a multi-layered conversation. There are many facets to it, but Rubio insists not only will he stay in, but he can win, and then he'll figure things out after that.
Major, let's talk about Donald Trump. You spoke to him last night. You asked him a question right off the top when he made his initial comments of the evening. He looks unstoppable. He won 3 out of 4 states. It's interesting. I found it very surreal that the first half of his comments before he started taking questions from reporters, it almost seemed as if it was an infomercial. We were watching him with his Trump steaks and the Trump water and the Trump winery. Instead of talking about policies, he essentially, it felt like as if John Oliver and Mitt Romney got under his skin and he had to, you know, let people know that this stuff was really good stuff.
This stuff is real. It exists. It's not kaput. It's not bankrupt. It hasn't gone the way of the dodo bird. Trump likes to make sure people understand what he has created, and he takes great offense to anyone who suggests something he has created that still exists, doesn't exist any longer. And it was an elaborate showcase. I mean, we walked in there and we see the water stacked up, then they're stacking up the wine. First they brought in the steaks about, I guess 7:30 or 8 o'clock. And then the guys who were in charge of the steaks, I don't know who they are, they're Trump steak people, said, hey, get those steaks out of the room. We want to keep them in the freezer. So then they took them out of the ballroom and then they brought them in. And I'm not kidding you folks, on huge wooden racks, escorted into the ballroom as if they were Greek gods, okay? So that was a whole show even before the press conference started. And I really can't remember a time when there was a presidential political press conference that at times felt like a segment on the Home Shopping Network. But in fact, it did.
Yeah, it was a very surreal moment. And it's interesting, Major, I guess the question is, a lot of Republicans who are trying to find a way to coalesce voters away from Donald Trump have been using some of this stuff, including Mitt Romney and others. But I guess people are saying it's a little too late. I'm sure Trump supporters loved seeing all that stuff out there.
But isn't this what he's good at? He takes the criticism, he absorbs it and spits it right back out, and people applaud.
What did he say early on in the press conference? I want to thank the lobbyists and the special interests, because obviously they did something to drive the turnout of the numbers we're seeing. I mean, he flips all these arguments around. And strategically, I think the Trump campaign always knew it had vulnerabilities, and we're expecting to get all the attacks they're seeing now far earlier in this process. But to Vlad, to your point about, is it too late? I don't know if it's too late, but it's awfully late in the game. And one thing psychologically voters do when they see attacks like this coming late in the process, and by that I mean after people have already voted and the candidate who is in the lead has won a significant number of contests, they begin to weigh all the criticisms differently, because they say to themselves, wait a minute, there's a process going on. People are voting for him. They're validating the Trump message. They're giving me permission, if I'm in a state that hasn't voted yet, to go with my instincts, because I like this guy, I like his message, I'm drawn to it. And so criticisms are filtered differently in the heat of battle than they would be had they been raised, let's just say in August, September, October, or November, before Trump had any victories and momentum and validation behind his campaign. He has it now. And for Trump and everyone else in politics, but specifically for Trump, victory is validation. Winning is what matters more than anything else. He says, I know how to close. I know how to win. I had the worst week of my campaign. I had the most vicious things said about me. And not only am I standing, I'm standing before you tonight victorious. And of course, it's important to point out that ballroom audience was all club members, good friends of the Trumps, friends and family. It was like a family reunion in addition to a Home Shopping Network infomercial. So there was a lot going on in that room last night that you typically don't see in a presidential campaign.
Best way to sum it up, Major Garrett in West Palm Beach, thank you.
Thank you.